Ladies and gentlemen, the sitting is now resumed. It's now time for questions for the Minister for Finance. I would be calling Mr Stewart, but he's not in his chair, so we'll move on to question number 2. Question number 2.
Tackling education underachievement is a key to improving the life chances for individuals in our society, particularly those experiencing most disadvantage. It is also vital for developing a thriving economy that offers opportunity for all. It is the responsibility of the education bodies and ultimately the Education Minister to ensure that schools and teachers are supported in addressing this issue. The Department of Education has received significant increases in funding from the Executive in recent years. Its 24-25 opening resource budget was almost $300 million, or 11.6% higher than the 23-24. That's before any in-year allocations are taken into account. For the draft budget for 25-26 sees the education resource DEL budget increasing by another 9.4%, excluding earmark funding. We know that early years interventions provides the best long-term outcomes for our children, particularly those facing disadvantage. In addition to increases in the day-to-day budget for the Department of Education, the 25-26 draft budget provides £50 million for early learning and childcare strategy, doubling the amount in 24-25. The Executive is also committed to providing a further £5 million in the June monitoring round. This funding is aimed at delivering improved outcomes for children and parents. I also announced last week £27.5 million for the Department of Education's proposal to support children with special educational needs, to reform services to ensure better outcomes for children. This proposal will support a suite of pilot programmes focused on early intervention and building an appropriately skilled workforce. It is for the Education Minister to identify how his department can deliver its priorities within its budget allocation. Thank you.
Mr Brooks for supplementary.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. At a recent Education Committee meeting, the expert panel on educational underachievement expressed concern that DE's allocation for a fair start in 24-25 amounted to £2.6 million of £41.2 million, or 6% of that which they had outlined in their action plan. Despite having cross-party support and being referenced in many manifestos, could I ask the Minister how he intends to support the Education Minister in delivering against this shortfall, which impacts particularly on our working class communities?
I commend the working group on its, or the independent review on its report, and the findings of that report and the implementation of that report is down to the Education Minister. The costings within the report are at a date and time. I think they were based on the 23-24 budget. This position has significantly changed since then in relation to the Department of Education. And I would suggest that perhaps a review of those costings matched against the current provision being provided to education may prove worthwhile. But as I said in my original answer, the Department of Education has received quite a considerable uplift. I'm not saying for one second that the Department of Education, or any department for that matter, is receiving all the funds that they require, but all departments have received considerable uplift since the Assembly has returned.
Hutchin.
Will the Minister address the underfunding of education here compared to other jurisdictions, as highlighted by the independent review of education?
It's often difficult to compare like for like in terms of funding between this jurisdiction and other jurisdictions in relation to education. And as I said to Mr Brooks, the funding which is referred to in the independent review is at a date and time, and I think it is against the 23-24 budget. There has been a significant uplift in funding towards education since then, and I will continue to work along with the Education Minister and other ministers to do what I can as Finance Minister to support them financially, but how they use their resources is a matter for each individual minister.
Colin Crawford.
Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answers. Minister, can I ask you to update us on any bids received by your department from the Department of Education?
The only bids we would be receiving would be through the monitoring rounds, and the Department of Education has benefited from the monitoring rounds when we have available funds to match their needs. They have benefited from the recent Transformation Fund funding as well. I think around £27 million was directed towards the Department of Education, particularly for special educational needs. So they have benefited from those. The draft budget is currently out for consultation. The consultation will close, and then the executive will make decisions on the way forward in relation to what allocations are allocated to each department.
Colin McGrath.
Just given the severity and scale of the numbers impacted by special educational needs and the number of commitments that there are within the programme for government for that, would the Minister feel it beneficial to ring-fence some of the funding that goes to the Department for special educational needs so that there can be a guarantee that that money is directed to those that need it the most?
Ring-fencing is an option for the executive. I make recommendations to the executive in regards to the budget, and it'll be an option for the executive as to whether they want to ring-fence allocations to any department for specific cases. And I would prefer, if I was making recommendations on that basis, it would be in line with the programme for government commitments.
Thank you. I call on Orla Flynn.
Question number 3, please.
The cost of doing business research being undertaken by the Ulster University Economic Policy Centre is on track to be delivered by the end of this month. This study was commissioned following concerns raised in the aftermath of the Chancellor's autumn budget. Where in particular employers understandably have significant concerns regarding the impact of the changes in employer national insurance contributions coming into effect next month. This is in addition to other cost pressures they are already facing, such as insurance and energy. To assess this, the research team has been undertaking their analysis and engaging widely with over 20 sectoral and business bodies to date in order to hear the voices of those potentially impacted. The report, when finalised, will be put me in a position to provide as strong as possible a case to the Treasury ahead of the June monitoring round.
Thank you. Thank the Minister for his response. Can the Minister confirm if he plans to meet directly with businesses and who the researchers have consulted with? Thank you.
Thank the member for a question. I am actually meeting the business sectors tomorrow in a roundtable discussion, and I look forward to listening to them in relation to the challenges and opportunities that face their sector as we move forward, and committed to working with them as we move forward. I have already lobbied quite strongly the Secretary of the Treasury, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, around these matters, the Secretary of State, and I will continue to engage in a way which allows the voice of the business sector to be heard at all levels of government.
Jan Forsyth.
Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answers so far. I really welcome this study on the cost of doing business in Northern Ireland as we look into April and the incredible pressures. A key aspect of this to the Northern Ireland economy is the childcare sector, and I want to ask the Minister, are the childcare sector represented in this group that he's meeting with, and will they be engaged with going forward as how they underpin businesses here in Northern Ireland?
There may be, not directly, but there may be businesses here represented by the various organisations I'm meeting tomorrow, and their voices may be heard through that aspect. But it is worth, again, pointing out that in terms of the childcare sector, we have, as a proposal in the draft programme for government, doubled the amount of money going in, from 25 million to 50 million, and the Executive has committed to allocating 5 million from the June monitoring round to this sector. So that will be a total of 55 million, starting from a zero base, which I think is, if credit is due, then the Executive have stepped forward in regards to this matter.
Justin McNulty.
Minister, I welcome that your department has belatedly confirmed rates will be included in the cost of doing business study. But what specific actions will you take to reform rates to better support hospitality and retail, which are struggling with increased costs and repeatedly cite the crippling burden of rates?
Rates are the only local taxation available to the Executive and to this Assembly. And while I can understand the focus on rates, any change to rates will require legislative change, which is possible. But if you are going to reduce the rates base on the hospitality sector, then you have to ask the question to yourself, do you reduce public services or do you add the burden elsewhere? That's the question you have to ask, because that's the outcome of your decision. So any decisions I make, and there's ongoing reviews in relation to a number of these matters, and reviews will be starting. What is the impact of each decision we make? And to be positive and negative, then you have to make the decision in the round. But you can't simply just focus on call for a reduction in the rate space for the hospitality sector without following that equation through.
Tennyson.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for your answers so far. Minister, it's welcome that this study will inform your negotiating position with the UK Government, but will it also inform your own department's position, and will we see any tangible actions from your department to support businesses with the cost of doing business?
Of course it will inform my department's thinking, it will inform my thinking, and I hope it will inform members' thinking in the House. It is vitally important that we move forward in the decision-making process based on evidence and data. And this report, or this analysis that we're having done, will allow us to do that. As I said in the Chamber yesterday, every decision you take in finance has a consequence, both positive and negative. And then you have to conclude to yourself which element of that is the most important to drive forward. But you can't take any decision in isolation.
Thank you. And I call on Paul Frew to ask a question on this issue. Paul.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Can I ask, whilst the Minister lobbies the government with regards to support, what specific support can he give the businesses come April?
It's worth noting that the Executive already has in place £275 million worth of rates relief towards businesses. £275 million worth of rates relief towards businesses. And that's a figure that isn't often quoted or used, but it's important to be aware of that when you're working out the equation and what you want to do next. So my department is offering significant rates relief to a range of businesses. We are working our way through the rates portfolio in terms of and reviewing each rate with a bid to come back here with decisions on how we move forward. And it's also worth remembering that the money we invest back into our public services benefits business as well. And the money we put back into public sector wages benefits businesses as well. So it is in many ways a circular economy, and we are playing our part in it.
Mr. Frew, your own question.
4, please, Minister.
The Assembly question you refer to relates specifically to a prior rating year debt as at the 31st of December 2024. A balance owing at a point in time serves only to reflect the position at that time. It's important that the member recognises that collection of rates is not static, and the numbers will have changed since the 31st of December. It's appropriate that I provide the current position on rate collection and the number of ratepayers with an agreed payment plan. As at the 2nd of March 2025, almost £1.59 billion has been collected, the highest amount ever collected. Approximately £247 million is still being collected. £142 million relates to bills after the 1st of April 2024. £105 million relates to rates billed in the previous years, a reduction of £75 million from the March 24 position. Payment arrangements are measures offered by LPS to alleviate financial distress to the ratepayer while maintaining rate collection alibi at a slower pace. Although throughout the year, LPS staff have been contacting ratepayers directly to remind them of rates they owe, highlighting help as well as consequences of non-payment. There are 8,434 domestic and 908 non-domestic ratepayers with agreed payment arrangements worth over £12 million. Thank you.
Mr. Frew for a supplementary.
Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer. And of course, he's right that the cost and the burden isn't static and will move through time. But at the point of time when I asked that question, there was £115.5 million of debt outstanding and nearly 44 properties in arrears. He talks about the burden, he talks about the share, the fair share, but it's very clear, Minister, that some people are not doing their fair share. What more can he do to increase or to decrease that debt and get it into the government coffers?
There's a variety of reasons as to why businesses and domestic ratepayers aren't paying their bills in the timely manner we should like them. And we have to understand those reasons as we deal with each case individually. But when it comes to light after working with the ratepayer that they're not working with us, then court action will be taken. and I have had engagement with LPS in regards to this matter, and we will pursue outstanding debts where there is a value in that return. We may also be dealing with businesses who went bankrupt with no opportunity for return. But I can assure the member we will work with ratepayers to collect our rates. Everyone has to pay their fair share. But when necessary, we will bring people to court to recover rates where necessary.
Could the Minister elaborate on what support is available to ratepayers?
There is a wide-ranging support available to ratepayers to assist them in fulfilling their payment of rates. In relation to perhaps start off as domestic ratepayers, you have housing benefit, rate rebate, low-income rate relief, disabled persons allowance, lone pensioners allowance. As an example, in non-domestic rates, we have industrial derating, charitable exemption, sport and recreation relief, freight transport relief, non-domestic vehicle rate relief. So there's a number of in-place assistance across the breadth of our ratepayers. And as I said to Mr Frew, we will work with ratepayers who are facing challenges to work out a repayment plan to allow them to pay their rates. Where we do have to go to court, we will go to court.
Mark Durkin.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. This is going back to the original question on rates debt. This is on top of £65 million of rates arrears that have been written off in the last year. Now, yesterday, executive parties voted for an above-inflation increase in rates. Are we robbing Peter because Paul, for whatever reason, hasn't been able to pay?
There will be historical debt that has been pursued and for a number of reasons may not be able to be collectible. For instance, I referred to businesses that have went bankrupt. They have went beyond the statute period of time, which I think is 6 years plus one. There may be other reasons why people cannot return their debt. So you have to, and every business will have to do this. Every business will come to a conclusion at some stage in the pursuit of debt as to whether it is value for money to pursue the debt or to write the debt off. And that's where you have to be. So that's the position that was taken in relation to 65 million. Last year, around 92.5% of all rates was paid within the time period specified. This year we're setting a target, I think it's around 93%, and we'll continue to pursue that. As I've said before, we will work with ratepayers. Each individual case tells its own story, and people, whether domestic or businesses, face hardship at times, and many people will work with us. Where we can't come to an arrangement or where people haven't worked with us, we will have to end up in court.
Mr Gaston.
Mr Deputy Speaker, just following on from the Minister's comments where he works with ratepayers or LPS will work with ratepayers, I have a case at the minute where the time frame given to the constituent to pay off their rates bill simply isn't long enough for them to financially avail or financially afford to pay it off. Will the Minister give a commitment that where there is circumstances where financial pressures dictate that they can't make it within the 4 years, the 6 years or the 8 years, the LPS will grant a longer time to pay off debt, because it's more important to get the rate payment in than have to take them to court and default because they can't pay the rate payment?
I can't comment on individual cases, and I can assure the member that, as I've said repeatedly during this question, that we are willing to work with ratepayers who face hardships and face challenges. If the member wishes to write to me about the individual case, I will raise the matter with LPS.
I call on Alan Chambers.
Question 5.
The Executive's focus must be on wider budget sustainability. We must also look at how we can do things better, improving efficiency and focusing on desired outcomes. While income generation will be part of this, decisions must be based on the economic and social context and the need to deliver the public services our citizens expect. The Executive Budget Sustainability Plan outlined additional income that will be generated in 24-25 and the amount of possible additional income for 25-26. The plan also committed the Executive to completion of a strategic review of income generation measures, and that work will commence following the finalisation of the 25-26 budget. However, I also believe it is incumbent on every minister to consider the appropriate income generation measures for their own department, and that does not require the Department of Finance-led discussions.
Can I ask the Minister if the Executive has considered utilisation of Northern Ireland Water, or does the Executive have other plans on how to provide the required funding to enable upgrades of failing wastewater plants in the Greater Belfast area?
The Executive has an agreed position in relation to NI Water, that it will remain a government-owned company and that it will be funded through the general grant as is currently done.
Does the Department of Finance view as the main factors? What does the Department of Finance view as the main factors in sustainable budgets?
Thank you. Sustainable budgets are not just about revenue raising, they are about doing things better. And of course that means it's being as efficient as possible, but also means ensuring we are doing the right things by focusing on the desired outcomes. As part of the Budget Sustainability Plan Forward Work Programme, my department are taking forward a number of key steps to improve the sustainability of our budgets. This includes working with all departments on the development of a longer-term fiscal sustainability plans, and this will help us understand the trajectory of spend associated with the strategic direction and plan changes.
Mr Deputy Speaker, Minister, the Budget Sustainability Plan sets out income or revenue generation plans, some of which involve no ministerial direction or decision and are tiny and frankly a bit surreal. They include things like hospital canteen charges and indeed ordnance survey map charges, hardly revolutionary stuff. Indeed, in a written answer to me, it was revealed that the departments had actually raised more money from those measures than in the years covered by the Budget Sustainability Plan. So can I ask, do you have a target for further fiscal devolution, real meaningful revenue raising, not for its own sake, but to better deliver public services, because that is, I suppose, what we're all here for?
I think it's only right and proper that departments continually review the cost of them doing business, and where they are providing services, that they satisfy themselves that the charge they have on them services is covering the cost of those services and is not placing a further burden on the public purse. And that sometimes requires decisions to be made in terms of you refer to canteens or you refer to whatever matter it may be. In some instances, departments haven't raised costs in some matters for 10, 15 years. That's unsustainable. So you have to start and look at those as well. And I suspect if I was to introduce new revenue raising measures without having departments to look at those, you would quite rightly challenge me over those. So in terms of fiscal devolution, I am ambitious about fiscal devolution. I believe that more tax-varying powers this Assembly and Executive has, it will be good for our economy. I think it will also be good for political stability and responsibility moving forward. So the members are aware how we're working our way through these in terms of the Inter-Fiscal Commission, its report, etc., engagement with the Treasury, etc. And we will continue to do that. But we also have to do the day-to-day mundane work as well. And that's what a lot of the departments have done and have managed to secure significant amounts of revenue in that regard.
Thank you. Mr Beattie.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Question 6, please.
Assaults upon those serving the public are an affront to us all. There's no place for any violence in the workplace or anywhere in society. Where an assault results in sickness absence, the data that the Department of Finance holds for all civil servants does not always make explicit the cause of the absence. In the case of stress-related absences, a questionnaire is issued to establish if the cause of the stress is work-related or not. However, sickness absence data would not specify whether a physical injury was caused by an assault or by an accident, or whether it took place in or outside the working environment. Where an injury takes place at work, it should, however, be recorded under the Department's health and safety policy. Of course, not every assault will result in sickness absence, but any assault at work should be recorded as a matter of the health and safety of staff. Health and safety at work is the responsibility of the individual departments. There has been one recorded case of assault on a member of my department in the past 12 months. The Department of Justice has advised me of 96 assaults on prison officers while on duty during that period, and 8 incidents in Woodlands Juvenile Centre where staff were injured on duty. The Department of Education and the Department of Economy have advised me that there have been no reported assaults on their staff during the period. The Department of Infrastructure has advised me that 2 instances of violence and aggression towards staff have been formally reported within the last 12 months.
Mr. Brady for a supplementary.
Mr. Speaker. And Minister, thank you for that detailed answer. And I'll be honest with you, I knew most of that. But here's the point. 96 prison officers. 96, with the rest we can count on one hand. Surely it makes sense that the Northern Ireland Civil Service Staff Handbook does look at a business area, that is the prison service, as separate from the rest of the civil service.
The Civil Service Handbook protects all civil servants, including prison officers, and is there to ensure that there's equity and fair play for all. And I believe that the handbook can and will continue, as every policy and can be reviewed and will be reviewed through time and learn lessons from. But the Civil Service Handbook is the best way forward in terms of supporting our prison officers and the rest of the civil service.
Colin Parry-Dalochy.
Minister, how are absences such as PTSD and other psychological illnesses managed under the sickness absence policy and procedures?
Absence management processes in the civil service are designed to consider and take account of the specific circumstances of each individual case. As part of the absence management procedure, all stress-related absences, including PTSD, are immediately referred to welfare support services. Alongside this, stress questionnaires is issued to establish if the cause of the stress is personal, domestic or work-related, and whether additional assistance such as employee assistance programme or temporary injury allowance application is required.
Colin Patsy McClung.
Minister, the number of working days lost within the civil service due to sickness went up from 72,000 in July 2024 to 81,600 in December 2024, with an additional estimated cost of 1.8 million. The largest section of this, apparently, according to the figures, is stress, depression and anxiety. That's 41.5%. As Minister in charge of the civil service, Minister, what measures is your department taking to try and introduce a more safe environment for people to work in and something that's more conducive to good mental health?
I think the supporting and working with our staff is vitally important, and ensuring that there is an environment under which they feel cherished and valued is also important. And the department is working closely with the trade union side in relation to how we continue to broaden that support and offer that support to our civil servants. Across society and across some businesses, there appears to be an increase in sickness levels. That's maybe specifically a range of issues come to that. We have to understand the trends within that to ensure that we offer the proper remedies to it. But I will continue to work along with my department, along with the trade union side, to ensure that we have the right policies in place to support our staff.
Well, and Joanne Bunting, and you've got a minute, Joanne.
Thanks, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Question 7.
The law concerning shared property management is complex. While it's based in land law, it also potentially touches and concerns areas of laws that are responsibility of other departments, such as communities in respect of housing policy and economy, in respect of consumer protection and company law. That said, scoping work by the Civil Law Reform team in my department is underway to review the regulation of property management and companies, service charges and other aspects relating to the shared property management. As part of the project, meetings are being held with concerned parties and stakeholders to gain insight into the issue around shared property management. And if the member wishes to engage with that team, I'm more than happy to facilitate that meeting.
That ends the period for listed questions. We'll now move on to 15 minutes of topical questions. Question number 4 has been withdrawn. I call on Matthew O'Toole. Over to you, Matthew.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Minister, Lough Neagh is an ecological disaster. We cannot build sufficient social homes, and there's a crisis in terms of delivering the economic infrastructure we need. All of that can be brought back to NI Water not being properly funded. You have ruled out water charges, fair enough. You've talked about developer charges, no further detail. Can you give some detail, as the person who was Infrastructure Minister until a few weeks ago and is Finance Minister now, how we will invest in wastewater infrastructure for the rest of this mandate, and please be specific.
Minister.
I can't hop from Finance Minister to Infrastructure Minister then back and forth. I'm more than happy to answer you as Finance Minister. We will continue to support NI Water the way we have been doing over this last number of years. This year, NI Water is receiving £500 million worth of public funding. £500 million worth. And I think that in itself is a testament of how the Executive is supporting NI Water moving forward. You only have to cast your eye to England to see what the alternatives deliver for you. The alternative funding measures, which some in this chamber may support in relation to privatisation or mutualisation, has led to increased debt of the water companies, increased pollution, less service to the public, and less investment in the infrastructure that was promised under privatisation. So that's not the model of the way forward. What we want to ensure is that the money, public money, is being used effectively and efficiently in delivering the services that are required. And I refer back to the point I've made several times. In the October monitoring round, or the January monitoring round, we offered NI Water £19 million, 2,500 homes connected. So let's see if there's more schemes like that can be achieved. As part of the Transformation Fund, £15 million to deal with stormwater and rainwater in a different way, so you don't have to direct it towards very, very expensive wastewater treatment works. But they should only be used to treat wastewater, so different ways of doing things. And I think there's a challenge there for the Executive and NI Water on how we do things differently.
You say that we'll continue the way we have been for the last few years in relation to NI Water. We'll be tearing their hair out. Loughney is an open-air cesspool. Your constituency faces onto it. Previous Sinn Féin Communities Minister promised 100,000 homes in the next 15 years. How in God's name we deliver those without proper investment, I don't know. Can I ask, are you genuine? And by the way, this issue about comparing it to England, nobody, certainly in the opposition, is calling for an English-style system. Far from it. But that does not mean that we simply drift along as we have been. Are you specifically saying that NI Water will have the first call on capital investment going forward? Because that is the upshot of what you're saying, that we're going to continue to fund it in exactly the same way as we have done through monitoring rounds, dribs and drabs.
Mr. O'Toole, you were asked to ask a question. You haven't asked a question, and I think you forfeited the right for the supplementary because that went on for rather far too long. Mr. Brett. Mr. Brett.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The Minister will be aware of the report issued by the Comptroller and Auditor General in relation to the annual accounts for the Department for the Economy. The Department took the unprecedented step of disclaiming those accounts. Can the Minister inform the House when his department or he as Finance Minister was informed of this?
I don't have those details in front of me. I'm aware of the media reports in this regard, but I don't have any further details in front of me.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Would the Minister then commit that his department did look at this issue? This covered £1 billion of funding that was allocated by his department to the Department for the Economy that could not be qualified by the Northern Ireland Audit Office. Given the importance of ensuring public funding is used properly, can the Minister give a commitment to this House today that he will look seriously at this issue?
It's my understanding that the issues identified by NI Audit Office through its disclaimer opinion are not about value for money, propriety or how the department manages its budget, but relates to the complexity of the consolidation process. So I will follow it up with my officials, but at this moment in time I have no concerns in relation to the value for money or propriety in this regard, but I'm more than happy to ask my officials to follow it up.
Mr. Gaston.
Minister, in this morning's Belfast Telegraph it has revealed that your department has spent over £250,000 on diversity, equality and inclusion training since 2019. What are you doing to cut back on that wastage?
I think that spans over 6 years, if I'm correct. I'm actually proud that my department is leading the way on equality and diversity. So yeah, I'm proud of it. And I think there should be more of it across society, where we learn to live and respect each other. Our differences are many and cover very many different topics, but let's be different, but let's respect our differences. So let's have more equality, let's have more diversity, let's have more training to understand how treating each other with respect and dignity benefits the entire society. And Mr. Galston, as a member of a minority, as a unionist, you should cherish equality legislation, because it is there to protect everyone.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. So more wastage is what the Minister orders. Some of that money was spent in membership fees for the discredited Stonewall Allies programme, which is used to push gender ideology. Why is taxpayers' money being used to push wasted on this nonsense years after the civil service and even the BBC have recognised that it should be withdrawn from the scheme?
Well, this nonsense that Mr. Galston talks about also refers to support for people with disabilities, for deaf, people with sight impairments. So it's only nonsense if you agree with, if you don't agree with it. Is that what we're going to base it on? See, I'm not going to base my equality work in my department based on whether I agree with it or not, on whether it is right in terms of protecting minorities and those who are disadvantaged in our society. That's what equality and diversity legislation is about. And as a member of a minority, you should cherish equality legislation, you should protect it, and you should insist it is actually enhanced.
Mr. Muller. I'll get the last one, Corley. Could I ask the Minister, how is the 24-25 and next year's budget supporting the delivery of more affordable childcare?
I think this is an area where the Executive has made huge strides forward. In the 24-25 budget, from a standstill, we invested £25 million in early learning and childcare. The draft budget, which is currently out for consultation, is looking to invest £50 million and add another £5 million to that as part of the June monitoring round. We have made huge strides forward, a lot more to be done, but I do think there has been significant progress made.
Mr. Bowler for supplementary. And could I thank the Minister for that answer, but following on from that, Minister, can you outline how the Department is supporting childcare providers through the rating?
Minister. 141 registered childcare providers receive rate relief through the Small Business Rate Relief Scheme. That support has been extended by my department for this rating year.
Thank you very much indeed. And Carol McCullion's not in her seat, so I call on Mr. Crawford. Mr. Crawford.
You, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Minister, can I ask what steps your department is taking to ensure that older people are not left behind in digitally accessing information and online financial services?
My predecessor engaged with the banking service on a number of occasions, and I will also do. In fact, I think we've set in place an annual meeting to discuss financial inclusion with the banking services to ensure, one of the examples you have used, that older people are not left behind.
Mr. Crawford.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, what safeguards are being implemented to protect older people from digital fraud and scams as they increasingly access financial services online?
These are really matters for the financial providers, and I know there's quite a good bit of work done in relation to the community and voluntary sector and spreading information, particularly to older people, to be aware of the potential for scams in either online or by phone, particularly towards the elderly. As I said, we do engage with the financial sector and will continue to do so to ensure they're doing everything they can to support the vulnerable in society.
I call on Peter McReynolds.
Minister, high streets are essential for our economy and jobs. What update can you give us on relevant recommendations from the High Street Task Force report regarding your department?
As I said, I'm meeting with the business sector tomorrow, including representatives of the retail sector, to continue discussions as to how we support the high streets moving forward. The rates relief schemes that we have in place are vitally important in that regard. The continuing business programme Back in Business, which we launched again yesterday in this Assembly and had support in this Assembly in relation to bringing vacant properties back into business, opening up and increasing footfall in areas is also vitally important to that as well.
I thank the Minister for his response, and I listened keenly to the answer to the questions earlier on. But given the importance of our high streets, can you advise what engagement has taken place since the publication of that report on a cross-departmental basis?
I'm only in post a few weeks. I've had no cross-departmental engagement in relation to the High Street Task Force in that time, but I'm more than happy to follow up with the member in writing if there has been any engagements prior to me coming into office. But as I say, I'm meeting the business sectors tomorrow, including representatives of retail. I think the tangible actions we have taken over this last number of days, even in this House, is about supporting business, and particularly in relation to the High Street.
Emma Sheeran.
Minister, we celebrated International Women's Day just at the weekend there. Could you outline what your department is doing to further gender diversity?
The civil service, is, as I've previously stated, is committed to equality, diversity and inclusion. Females make up 50.2% of the civil service workforce in 2024, closely matching the economically active population of 49.5%. The civil service has made progress in increasing its gender diversity, with a trend of historic underrepresentation of women in leadership roles being reversed. 43.8% of senior civil servants are now female on the 1st of January 2024, in comparison to 34.9% in 2014 and just 11.3% in 2000.
I get listen Ira Fahini Fragrishan. Can you outline what exactly has been done to ensure the policies are effective in meeting these objectives?
This year, the Civil Service will complete a gender review to assess the gender composition of its workforce and applicant pools to inform a programme of outreach activity and strengthening existing links with the education sector to promote professions which are gender dominated, with a view to attracting more female applicants. For instance, science, engineering and technology. Expand entry routes to the civil service by developing pre-employability and employability schemes, and support the career development of existing female colleagues through mentoring programmes and new processes for employee mobility and job share.
Thank you, Minister. And as Paula Bradshaw is not in her place, that therefore concludes the questions for the Minister for Finance. And for finance question, the time is up. Before we move to the next... Sorry, yes, please.
Deputy Speaker, I just would ask maybe if it might be an opportunity for the Speaker to reflect the importance of a democracy.